The Vampire King stopped because the locket in the pawnshop window was impossible. Dorian Quentin had walked this street 1,000 times in the last century, past shop fronts that changed hands every decade, past human lives that flickered and went dark. He was late for a council meeting. He had no time for distractions. But the velvet tray behind the smudged glass held a piece of worked silver he had last seen in 1724, pinned to the breast of a man who swore an oath in a vault beneath Prague and then vanished into history. The price tag said $48. He pushed open the door. A bell chimed. The man behind the counter looked up from his phone, assessed Dorian's coat and the unhurried way he moved, and sat a little straighter. "Help you?" "The locket." "Second tray, left side." The broker retrieved it without comment and set it on the counter. Dorian did not touch it immediately. 3 centuries had not dulled his memory. The clasp was original. The engraving on the back, a line of text in a dead Czech dialect, read, "By this we are bound." He opened it. Inside, where a portrait should sit, was a circular void and a series of notches too precise to be decorative, a key, a steward's seal. $50 and it's yours, the broker said. Dorian looked up. "Who brought this in?" "Can't say. Privacy policy." Dorian set $300 bills on the counter. "Who?" The broker hesitated only a second. "Woman came in yesterday. Looked like she hadn't slept in a week. Said it was her husband's. He died 6 months ago. She needed cash for groceries." Dorian's expression did not change, but something cold settled in his chest. He took the locket, left the money, and walked out into the autumn afternoon. The council could wait. This could not, because if the seal had surfaced, the blood lending house would already be hunting it. And if they found the woman first, she would not live long enough to understand why. He returned to the pawnshop after dark. The broker had closed up, but Dorian let himself in through the back. It took him 4 minutes to find the intake log and another 2 to memorize the address. Jessica Larkin. Apartment 4B, 15 blocks east. The building was the kind that wore its poverty quietly. No graffiti, but the locks were loose and the hallway lights flickered. Dorian climbed the stairs and knocked. A long pause. Then a woman's voice, wary. "Who is it?" "My name is Dorian Quentin. I bought something from a pawnshop this morning that belonged to your husband. I'd like to speak with you." Another pause. "I'm not buying anything. I'm not selling." The door opened 4 inches, stopped by a chain. A woman looked out at him. Mid-30s. Dark hair pulled into a messy knot, exhausted eyes that still managed to be sharp. She studied him the way someone studies a predator that has wandered too close to the campfire. "What do you want?" "To return this." He held up the locket. Her gaze flicked to it, and something in her face shifted. Not relief, wariness. "I sold that, I know. I'm giving it back." "Why?" "Because it should not have been sold." "That's not an answer." Dorian allowed himself the smallest flicker of approval. Exhausted and poor, and she still would not be moved by a stranger's charity. "May I come in?" "No, then we'll speak here. The locket is valuable, far more valuable than $48. It belonged to a man named Tomas Cernik. He died in 1724. Your husband was descended from him." She stared at him. "You're insane." "I'm not, and you know I'm not because you're still listening." The door did not close. Jessica Larkin's jaw tightened. "My husband never mentioned any Tomas whoever. He wouldn't have known. The line was lost centuries ago. But the seal was passed down father to child until it reached him. And now it's reached you. Great. A family heirloom. I sold it because my daughter needed to eat. If you want to give it back out of some weird rich person guilt, fine. But I'm not interested in a history lesson. You're not understanding me. This isn't a keepsake, it's a legal instrument. People will come looking for it. Dangerous people." For the first time, fear crept into her expression. "Are you threatening me?" "No. I'm telling you that you're in danger and I can help." "By doing what?" "By making sure the locket stays out of the wrong hands. And by making sure you and your daughter stay safe while I deal with the people who want it." She studied him for a long moment. Dorian knew what she saw. Pale skin, white hair, a face too symmetrical to be entirely human, and eyes that had not blinked since the conversation began. He did not try to hide what he was. Humans who were clever always sensed it anyway. "What are you?" she asked quietly. "Someone who keeps his word." "That's not an answer either." "No, it isn't." She looked down at the locket in his hand, then back at his face. "My daughter's asleep. If you wake her up, I'll stab you." Dorian inclined his head. "Understood." She closed the door, undid the chain, and opened it again. The apartment beyond was small and tidy. A couch with a patched cushion. A kitchen table with 2 mismatched chairs. A child's drawing taped to the refrigerator. Jessica gestured to the table and did not offer him a seat so much as claim one for herself, positioning herself between him and the narrow hallway that led to the bedrooms. Dorian sat. He set the locket on the table between them. "Start explaining," she said. 300 years ago, a coalition of vampire houses signed a treaty. It established territories, trade laws, and rules of engagement. The original documents were stored in a vault in Prague. The vault's location was kept secret and access was controlled by a steward, a human family bound by oath to serve as neutral keepers. The steward carried a seal. That seal. He nodded at the locket. When the steward died, the seal passed to his heir. The line was supposed to continue in perpetuity. Jessica's expression had gone very still. You're telling me you're a vampire? Yes. And my husband's family was supposed to guard some treaty nobody's heard of for 300 years. Yes, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Possibly. But it's also true. She leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. Prove it. Dorian considered her. Then he stood, moved to the kitchen window and drew the curtain aside. Streetlights spilled in. He held his hand in the beam. Within seconds, the skin began to redden, then blacken. Smoke curled from his palm. He withdrew his hand and the burns healed in seconds. The flesh knitting shut as if it had never been damaged. Jessica's face had gone white. Jesus Christ. An unfortunate example, but effective. Dorian sat again. The treaty is not symbolic. It prevents wars. Without it, the houses will fracture. They're already fracturing. A lending house, House Dravik, has been searching for the seal for over a century. They want the treaty destroyed so they can expand their holdings without legal consequence. If they find you, they'll take the seal and kill anyone who knows it existed. Why didn't they just break into the vault? Because no one knows where it is. The location was passed verbally from steward to heir. When your husband's ancestor disappeared in the 18th century, the knowledge died with him. The seal is the only way to find it. Jessica looked down at the locket. Her hands were shaking. She laced her fingers together to still them. My husband didn't know any of this. He barely knew his father. He thought the locket was just something his grandfather left him. Then the line broke somewhere. The oath was forgotten. But the seal survived. And now I'm supposed to what? Guard a treaty I never agreed to? Keep my daughter safe from vampires who want to kill us? No. Dorian's voice was firm. I'm going to do that. She looked up sharply. Why? Because the treaty matters. And because you shouldn't have to pay for an oath your ancestors swore before you were born. That's generous. It's self-interested. If House Dravik gets the seal, my house falls with the others. I need the treaty intact, so I'm useful. Yes, but that doesn't mean I'll let you come to harm. Jessica laughed, a short, bitter sound. You don't even know me. No, but I know you pawned a family heirloom to buy bread. That tells me everything I need to know. Her jaw tightened. Don't romanticize me. I did what I had to. I'm not romanticizing. I'm recognizing competence. You're smart, you're careful, and you love your daughter enough to sacrifice your pride. Those are qualities I respect. She stared at him. For a long moment, the apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Then she said, What do you want from me? Let me return the locket to your daughter. Not to you, to her. Jessica frowned. Why? Because if I give it to you, it looks like payment. Like I'm buying your cooperation. If I give it to her, it's returning something that belongs to your family. No debt, no obligation. That's a hell of a fine distinction. It's the only distinction that matters. Jessica was quiet. Then she said, She's 7 years old, I know. If you scare her, I'll find a way to hurt you. I don't care what you are. Dorian inclined his head, understood. Jessica stood and walked down the hallway. Dorian heard a door creak, a murmur of voices, and then the soft pad of small feet. A child appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. She wore pajamas with stars on them. Her hair was the same dark shade as her mother's, and her face was sleep-soft and wary. Rosalind, Jessica said gently, This man has something that belonged to your father. Rosalind looked at Dorian. He met her gaze, careful to keep his expression calm. Then he picked up the locket and held it out. Your father's family kept this safe for a very long time, he said quietly. It's important. I'm giving it back to you so you can decide what to do with it when you're older. Rosalind stepped forward and took the locket. She turned it over in her hands, studying the engraving. What does it say? It says, By this we are bound. It's in a language people don't speak anymore. What does it mean? It means the people who wore it made a promise, and they kept it. Rosalind looked up at her mother. Jessica nodded. Rosalind slipped the chain over her head. The locket hung nearly to her waist. Thank you, she said. Dorian inclined his head. You're welcome. Jessica guided Rosalind back to bed, and when she returned, her expression was complicated. That was decent of you. It was necessary. Same thing? Sometimes. She sat down again. So what happens now? Now I find the vault. Once I have the treaty documents, House Dravik has no reason to come after you, and how do you find it? Dorian picked up the locket. The seal is a key. It will open the vault. But I need to know where the vault is. That means research, old records. Anything your husband left behind that might have clues. Jessica's face clouded. He didn't leave much. A few boxes in storage. Some papers, I'll need to see them. Fine, but I'm coming with you. Dorian raised an eyebrow. That's not necessary. It is to me. I'm not sitting around waiting for someone to decide I'm a loose end. You'll be safer here. I'll be safer where I can see what's happening. They stared at each other. Dorian saw the set of her jaw and realized she would not be moved. Your daughter's a babysitter. A neighbor I trust. She'll be fine for a few hours, Dorian considered. Then he nodded. Tomorrow night, I'll come for you at 9. Jessica stood. One more thing, yes? If this goes bad, if something happens to me, you make sure Rosalind is taken care of. Not by you. By someone human, someone safe. Nothing will happen to you. Promise it anyway. Dorian met her gaze. I promise. She walked him to the door. As he stepped into the hallway, she said, Why do you care, really? Dorian paused. Because 300 years ago I signed that treaty. I gave my word that the laws would hold. If I let them fall apart now, my word means nothing. And if my word means nothing, then neither do I. Jessica nodded slowly. Then I guess we both have something to prove. I guess we do. He left. Behind him the door closed and the chain slid into place. Dorian descended the stairs and stepped into the street. The night air was cold, and somewhere across the city, the council was still waiting. He did not go to them. Instead, he pulled out his phone and made a call. Lucienne, I need a favor. The voice on the other end was dry. You missed the meeting. I found the steward's seal. A pause. Then sharply, where? Pawnshop. $16 above scrap value. The family line broke. A widow sold it to buy groceries, and Dravik doesn't know yet, but they will. Then kill the widow and take the seal. No. Another pause. Dorian, I gave her my word she'd be safe. The word stands. I need you to put a watch on her building. No one goes in or out without my knowing. Lucienne sighed. You're going to get sentimental over a human. I'm going to keep my word. Are you helping or not? I'll send someone. But if this causes problems, it won't. Dorian ended the call. Then he stood in the street, the locket heavy in his pocket, and looked up at the window of apartment 4B. The light was still on. Jessica Larkin was probably sitting at that table, trying to make sense of a world that had just turned itself inside out. He knew the feeling. The next night, Dorian returned at 9 sharp. Jessica answered the door in jeans and a sweater, her hair braided back. She looked like she had not slept. Rosalind's with Mrs. Chen downstairs, she said. Let's go. They took Dorian's car, a black sedan that was meticulously clean and utterly anonymous. Jessica gave him directions to a storage facility on the edge of the city, and they drove in silence. Dorian did not try to fill it with conversation. He could feel the tension radiating off her, the fear she was working very hard to suppress. The storage facility was locked, but Jessica had a key. She led him down a fluorescent-lit hallway to a unit near the back. Inside were a dozen boxes neatly labeled clothes, books, papers, tools. Jessica knelt by the box marked papers and pulled it open. He wasn't sentimental. If he kept something, it was because it was useful. Dorian crouched beside her. Together, they sifted through the contents. Tax returns, medical records, a deed to a car that had been sold years ago. And then at the bottom, a leather portfolio tied with string. Jessica opened it. Inside were letters, old and brittle, written in a language she did not recognize. Dorian took one carefully and held it up to the light. Check, he said. 18th century. What do they say? He read in silence, his expression growing colder. They're instructions, passed from steward to heir. The vault is beneath the old cathedral. The entrance is hidden behind the fourth pillar on the north side. The seal opens a mechanism in the stone. Jessica's voice was tight. The old cathedral. In Prague? No, here. The cathedral was moved stone by stone in 1893. It's in the historic district now. A museum? That's insane. That's thorough. Moving the vault with the cathedral meant the location stayed secret even if the building changed hands. Jessica sat back on her heels. So we go to a museum, find a secret door, and hope no one notices. Not we. I go. You stay with your daughter. Not a chance, Jessica. You need me. You said it yourself. The seal is a key. Rosalind has it. Dorian's jaw tightened. Then I'll take the locket, and what if the mechanism needs something else? A password? A blood sample? You don't know what's down there. Which is why I should go alone. Which is why you need someone who has a claim to that seal. Jessica's voice was firm. You can protect me or you can argue with me, but you can't do both. Dorian stared at her. Then he said, You're infuriating. I'm practical. There's a difference. He stood and offered her a hand. She took it and he pulled her to her feet. If something happens, then you'll fix it. That's the deal. They returned to the car. The cathedral was a 15-minute drive, a Gothic revival structure that had been converted into a historical museum decades ago. It was closed for the night, but Dorian had anticipated that. He parked in the alley behind the building and led Jessica to a side door. You're breaking in, she said. I'm entering discreetly. That's breaking in. Do you want to debate semantics or find the vault? Jessica pressed her lips together. Dorian picked the lock in under a minute and they slipped inside. The museum was dark, the exhibits draped in shadow. Dorian moved through the space with perfect confidence, his eyes adjusting instantly to the lack of light. Jessica stayed close behind him, her hand brushing his arm every few steps. The north side of the cathedral was now a gallery dedicated to the building's history. The fourth pillar was thick and ornate, covered in carved saints and angels. Dorian ran his hand along the stone, feeling for irregularities. Jessica held up her phone's flashlight. There, she said, pointing. A small depression, no larger than a coin, sat at shoulder height. Dorian took the locket from his pocket and opened it. The circular seal fit perfectly into the void. He pressed it in and twisted. Something deep in the stone groaned. A section of the pillar swung inward, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Jessica's voice was very quiet. "Oh my God." Dorian stepped through. "Stay close." They descended. The air grew colder, thick with the scent of old stone and older secrets. At the bottom, the stairs opened into a vaulted chamber. Shelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound volumes and scrolls sealed in wax. In the center of the room, on a pedestal, sat a single chest. Dorian approached it slowly. The chest was locked, but the lock bore the same notches as the seal. He inserted the locket again and turned. The chest opened. Inside were documents, hundreds of them, written in a dozen languages. Treaties, amendments, maps marking territorial boundaries. Dorian lifted the top sheet and read the first line. "By this accord, signed in blood and bound by law, the houses of the night do swear." "This is it," he said quietly. Jessica peered over his shoulder. "So what now?" "Now I take these to the council. They'll verify the documents and enforce the treaty. House Dravik will have no legal standing to challenge it. And that's it? We're safe?" Dorian looked at her. "Not yet. Dravik won't stop just because the law says they should. They'll come after the seal to destroy the evidence. Then just a seal. I can't. It's the only proof the steward line exists. Without it, the documents have no enforcer. The treaty becomes symbolic." Jessica's face hardened. "Then we're stuck for now." A sound echoed from the staircase, footsteps, quick and light. Dorian turned, placing himself between Jessica and the entrance. A figure descended into the vault, pale and sharp-eyed, dressed in a long coat that billowed like wings. "Dorian Quentin," the figure said, voice smooth as silk. "How convenient." Dorian's expression did not change. Constantin Dravik smiled. His teeth were very white. "You've saved us a great deal of trouble. We've been searching for this vault for decades, and here you are, kind enough to open it for us. The treaty stands, Constantine. The council will enforce it. The council is weak. Half of them want the treaty gone. They'll thank me for finishing what should have been done centuries ago. They'll execute you for breaking the law only if they can prove I broke it." Constantine's gaze shifted to Jessica. "And I intend to make sure there's no one left to testify." Dorian moved. He was fast. Faster than human eyes could follow, but Constantine was faster. They collided in the center of the vault, a blur of white and shadow. Jessica stumbled back, her phone clattering to the floor. The fight was brutal and silent. No wasted movement, no theatrics. Dorian was older, stronger, but Constantine was vicious. He drove Dorian back against the shelves, sending books tumbling. Dorian caught his arm, twisted, and hurled him across the room. Constantine landed in a crouch, grinning. "You've gotten slow. You've gotten arrogant." Constantine lunged again. Dorian met him halfway. They grappled, fangs bared, and for a moment, Jessica thought Dorian would lose. Then he shifted his weight, hooked Constantine's leg, and slammed him into the pedestal. The impact shattered stone. Constantine snarled, grabbed a shard, and drove it toward Dorian's throat. Jessica picked up a book and hurled it. The book hit Constantine in the side of the head, and he turned, startled. Dorian used the distraction. He caught Constantine's wrist, twisted the shard free, and drove it into the other vampire's shoulder. Constantine screamed, a sound that was more rage than pain. "Go," Dorian said, not looking at Jessica. "Get out." Jessica did not move. "I'm not leaving you." "Jessica." Constantine tore the shard free and backhanded Dorian across the jaw. Dorian staggered. Constantine turned on Jessica, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "You're the steward," he said. "Or your daughter is. It doesn't matter. I'll kill you both." Jessica grabbed another book, a heavy one, and held it like a weapon. "Try it." Constantine laughed. Then he moved, and Jessica did not have time to scream. He was on her in a second, one hand at her throat. She swung the book, but he caught her wrist and squeezed. Bones cracked. The book fell. Dorian hit him from behind. The impact drove them both to the ground, and Constantine lost his grip. Jessica scrambled back, cradling her wrist. Dorian and Constantine rolled across the floor, a tangle of limbs and fury, and then Dorian was on top, his hand around Constantine's throat. "Yield," Dorian said, voice cold. Constantine bared his teeth. "Go to hell." Dorian's hand tightened. "Yield, or I'll make sure the council knows you tried to kill a steward under my protection. They won't care. They will, because I'll make them care." For a long moment, they stared at each other. Then Constantine laughed, a wet, choking sound. "You've gone soft, Dorian. You always were too sentimental." Dorian leaned closer. "And you've always been too reckless. Get out. If I see you again, I'll kill you." He released Constantine and stepped back. Constantine rose slowly, rubbing his throat. He looked at Jessica, then at Dorian, and his expression was pure contempt. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." Constantine turned and walked up the stairs. His footsteps faded into silence. Dorian stood there, breathing hard, his coat torn and blood-stained. Then he turned to Jessica. "Your wrist." She held it up. It was swelling, the skin already darkening. "I'll live. We need to get you to a hospital. We need to get those documents to the council." "Jessica, I'm fine. Let's finish this." Dorian looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. Not softness, but respect. You're stubborn. I'm practical. He gathered the documents and placed them carefully in the chest. Then he closed the vault, removed the seal, and led Jessica back up the stairs. They left the cathedral the way they had come, slipping into the night like ghosts. At the hospital, they told the staff Jessica had fallen. A hairline fracture, nothing serious, but she would need a splint for a few weeks. Dorian waited in the hallway, and when she emerged, he drove her home. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now I present the documents to the council. They'll review them, verify the seals, and enforce the treaty. House Dravik will be sanctioned. And me? You're safe. I'll make sure of it." Jessica looked out the window. "You know what's funny? I sold that locket because I thought it was worthless, and now people are trying to kill me because it's too valuable. Life is ironic that way. That's not irony. That's cruelty." Dorian did not disagree. When they reached her apartment, he walked her to the door. Jessica paused, her good hand on the knob. "Thank you. For tonight." "You don't need to thank me. I do. You could have let Constantine kill me. It would have made your life easier." "No, it wouldn't." She looked at him, and for the first time her expression was unguarded. "Why? Because I gave you my word. And because you threw a book at a vampire to protect me. That's not something I forget." Jessica laughed. A small, tired sound. "It was a really heavy book. It was perfect." She opened the door and stepped inside. "Good night, Dorian." "Good night, Jessica." The door closed. Dorian stood there for a moment, then turned and walked away. The council convened 3 nights later. Dorian presented the treaty documents, laid them on the long table in the center of the hall, and waited while the elders examined them. The room was silent except for the rustle of parchment. Finally, the eldest, a woman named Seraphine, looked up. "These are legitimate. The seals are intact. The steward line is confirmed. Then the treaty stands," Dorian said. "It does, but there's a problem." "What problem?" Seraphine gestured to one of the documents. "The stewardship is hereditary and binding. The current steward is legally obligated to serve the council until death or the line's end. According to this, the steward is a 7-year-old child." Dorian's jaw tightened. That was not the intent of the law. Intent is irrelevant. The law is clear, then the law is wrong. The room went very quiet. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me. I said the law is wrong. The steward's line was broken for 2 centuries. The child's mother sold the seal to buy bread. They had no knowledge of the oath, no agency in its making. Binding the child to serve is unjust. The law does not care about justice. It cares about order. Then I'm challenging the law." Seraphine leaned back in her chair. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that I signed the treaty. I have standing to amend it. Amendments require a unanimous vote." "Then call the vote." The council members exchanged glances. Then one of them, a thin man named Gregor, spoke. "What are you proposing?" "The stewardship ends with the current generation. The mother serves if she consents. The child is free to choose at 18. If she declines, the stewardship dissolves and the documents are entrusted to the council." Gregor frowned. "That sets a dangerous precedent." "No, it corrects an injustice." Seraphine studied him. "You're risking your standing in this house for a human woman and her child. I'm upholding the principle that oaths require consent. If we don't honor that, the treaty is meaningless. And if the woman refuses to serve, then I'll serve as steward myself, but the child will not be bound." The silence stretched. Then Seraphine said, "Very well, we'll vote." It took 2 hours. In the end, the amendment passed, 7 votes to 4. The stewardship would end with Jessica if she accepted it. Rosalind would choose freely at 18. Dorian left the hall and went directly to Jessica's apartment. It was late, nearly 3 in the morning, but she answered the door immediately. She looked like she had been waiting. "Well," she said, "the treaty stands. The stewardship is yours if you want it. Rosalind is free to choose when she's 18. If you both decline, the documents go to the council and the stewardship ends." Jessica stared at him. "You did that?" "I did." "Why?" "Because you didn't consent to the oath and because I gave you my word." Jessica's eyes were bright. "What does the stewardship even mean? What would I have to do?" "You'd keep the documents safe. You'd serve as a neutral arbiter if disputes arise. You'd be paid a salary enough to live comfortably. The work is mostly symbolic. The danger is real." "How real?" "House Dravik is sanctioned. But they have allies. You'd need protection. I'd provide it." Jessica crossed her arms. "For how long?" "As long as you need it." She looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "I want the job, but I'm not taking charity. I'll do the work, I'll earn the salary, and if I ever feel like I can't do it anymore, I'll walk away." "Agreed?" Dorian inclined his head. "Agreed. Good. When do I start?" "Next week. There's a ceremony. You'll swear the oath in front of the council." "Will Constantine be there?" "No. He's been exiled from the city. For how long?" 50 years. Jessica let out a breath. Okay. Dorian turned to go, but she caught his arm. "Wait." He looked back. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For everything. You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do. You saved our lives. You changed a 300-year-old law. You didn't have to do any of that. I gave you my word." "Your word means something. That's rare." Dorian met her gaze. For a moment he considered saying something else, something true and dangerous. Then he stepped back and the moment passed. "Good night, Jessica." "Good night." Over the next year, Dorian saw Jessica every Tuesday. That was the day she came to the vault to review the documents, catalog new entries, and meet with him to discuss any developments. It became a routine. She would arrive at 7 in the evening, and they would work until 10. Sometimes they talked about the treaty. Sometimes they talked about Rosalind, who was doing well in school and had started taking violin lessons. Sometimes they did not talk at all, simply existing in each other's presence. Dorian found himself looking forward to Tuesdays. Jessica was everything he had expected and nothing he had prepared for. She was sharp and stubborn and completely unafraid of him. She argued with him about every decision, questioned every rule, and refused to be moved by anything other than logic. She was also kind in ways that startled him. She brought him coffee even though he did not drink it, just because she thought he might enjoy the gesture. She remembered details he mentioned in passing. She smiled when he made a dry observation, and her laughter was warm and real. He did not mean to fall in love with her. It happened anyway, slowly and inevitably, like water wearing down stone. One Tuesday evening in late autumn, Jessica arrived later than usual. She looked drawn, her eyes shadowed. "Are you all right?" Dorian asked. "Fine, just tired." "You should rest." "I'll rest when the work is done." They reviewed the documents in silence. Halfway through, Jessica set down her pen and rubbed her temples. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course. Why didn't you ever marry?" "In 300 years you must have met someone." Dorian considered the question. "I've known many people. Few of them stayed because they died. Others left. Immortality is isolating. Humans live such short lives. By the time you learn to love them, they're gone." Jessica's voice was quiet. "That sounds lonely." "It is." "Then why not turn someone? Make them like you?" "Because turning someone is not a gift. It's a choice they have to make, and most people don't want it. They think they do, but when they understand what it means, really means, they change their minds." "What does it mean?" Dorian looked at her. "It means watching everyone you love die. It means outliving your children, your friends, your world. It means becoming something other than human and never being able to go back." Jessica was silent for a long time. Then she said, "You didn't answer my question. Why didn't you marry?" "Because I never met someone who made me want to, and now." The question hung in the air between them. Dorian met her gaze and saw understanding there and fear and something else he did not dare name. "Now," he said quietly, "I have." Jessica's breath caught. "Dorian, I'm not asking you for anything. I'm simply telling you the truth." "Why?" "Because you deserve to know." She stood abruptly, pacing to the far side of the vault. "You can't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I'm human. I'm going to get old and die. You're going to stay exactly the way you are. There's no future in that, I know." "Then why tell me?" "Because I've spent 300 years avoiding the truth. I'm tired of it." Jessica turned to face him, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I can't give you forever. I'm not asking for forever. I'm asking for now." "That's not fair, I know." She crossed the space between them and stopped a foot away. "You're making this so much harder. I'm sorry." "No, you're not." "No, I'm not." Jessica laughed, a broken sound, and then she reached up and kissed him. It was brief and fierce, and when she pulled back, her face was flushed. "This is a terrible idea," she said. "I agree. We're going to regret this. Probably. Okay." They kissed again, slower this time, and Dorian felt something inside him settle into place. He had lived for centuries, watched empires rise and fall, but nothing had ever felt as right as this. When they finally pulled apart, Jessica rested her forehead against his. "What are we doing?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Good. As long as we're both confused." They left the vault hand in hand, and for the first time in a very long time, Dorian felt something close to hope. The year passed in Tuesdays. Jessica and Dorian did not define what they were to each other. They did not need to. They simply existed in the space they had carved out, careful and deliberate, building something that felt fragile and precious. Rosalind noticed. She was 8 now, perceptive and clever, and one evening she asked her mother, "Is Mr. Quentin your boyfriend?" Jessica nearly choked on her tea. "What makes you say that?" "Because you smile when you talk about him. And because he looks at you like you're important. Everyone's important, not like that." Jessica set down her cup. "Would it bother you if he was?" Rosalind considered. "Is he nice to you?" "Very. Does he make you happy?" "Yes." "Then I don't mind." Jessica pulled her daughter into a hug. "You're too smart for your own good." "I know." But the fragile peace did not last. One Tuesday, Dorian arrived at the vault to find Jessica waiting, her expression grim. "We have a problem," she said. "What kind of problem?" She handed him a letter. It was written on thick paper, sealed in red wax, and addressed to her in an elegant script. Dorian opened it and read. "To Jessica Larkin, steward of the treaty. We are aware of the amendment to the stewardship law. We are also aware of your relationship with Dorian Quentin. Under the terms of the original treaty, a steward is required to remain neutral and impartial. A romantic entanglement with a council member is a direct violation of that neutrality. You have 30 days to dissolve the relationship or relinquish the stewardship. Failure to comply will result in the treaty's nullification. Signed, the Houses of the Night. Dorian's jaw tightened. This is Dravik's doing. Can they actually do this? They're trying to. The neutrality clause was intended to prevent stewards from being bribed or coerced. It was never meant to govern personal relationships. But the letter says, the letter is a manipulation. They're using the law to force you out. Jessica's voice was tight. Then what do we do? Dorian set the letter down. I challenge the interpretation. I'll take it to the council. And if they side with Dravik, then I'll argue that the treaty's spirit supersedes its letter. The steward serves the treaty, not the council's whims. And if that doesn't work, Dorian looked at her, then I'll step down from the council. You stay as steward. Jessica's eyes widened. You can't do that. I can, Dorian. The council is your life. You've been part of it for centuries, and you're part of my life now. I'm not giving that up. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly. Jessica grabbed his arm. Listen to me. If you step down, you lose your influence. You lose your ability to protect me. You lose everything you've built. I don't care. Well, I do. Her voice cracked. I'm not going to be the reason you throw your life away. Dorian caught her hand. You're not throwing anything away. You're giving me something worth keeping. That's not how this works. Then tell me how it works. She pulled away, pacing. I don't know. I just know that I can't let you sacrifice everything for me. You're not letting me. I'm choosing. It's the wrong choice. It's my choice. They stared at each other, the vault silent around them. Finally, Jessica said, promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll fight this. Not by stepping down, by making them see reason, Jessica. Promise me. Dorian hesitated. Then he nodded. I promise. The council convened 2 weeks later. Dorian presented the letter, outlined the legal arguments, and demanded a hearing. The council debated for hours. Some argued the neutrality clause was absolute. Others argued it was outdated. In the end, Seraphine called for a vote. The steward remains neutral by virtue of the office, not by virtue of isolation, she said. Personal relationships do not constitute a breach of duty unless they influence the steward's decisions. We will monitor Jessica Larkin's conduct. If no bias is detected, the stewardship stands. The motion passed 8-3. Dorian returned to Jessica and told her the news. She sagged with relief, and then she kissed him, fierce and grateful. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me, thank yourself. You've proven you're capable. They see that now. But the victory was short-lived. A week later, Jessica received another letter. This one was not addressed to her. It was addressed to Rosalind. To Rosalind Larkin, under the terms of the steward's seal, you are named heir to the treaty's protection. At the age of 18, you will be required to choose, accept the stewardship or dissolve it. However, recent discoveries have revealed that the seal carries a secondary binding. The heir is not merely named, she is marked. The magic within the seal has recognized you, and by law you are bound to serve. This binding cannot be undone by amendment or vote. The stewardship is yours, by blood and by right, and you will serve until death or the line's end. Signed, the Houses of the Night. Jessica's hands shook as she read it. Dorian took the letter, scanned it, and his expression went cold. This is a lie, how do you know? Because I helped write the original treaty. There is no secondary binding. The seal recognizes the heir, but it does not compel them. This is a fabrication. Then why send it? To frighten you, to make you think Rosalind is trapped. Jessica sat down heavily. They're trying to force me to give up the stewardship. Yes, and if I don't, then they'll keep pushing. They'll find another loophole, another clause, another way to twist the law. Jessica looked up at him, her face pale. Then maybe I should step down. No, Dorian, no. You've done nothing wrong. Rosalind has done nothing wrong. I'm not letting them bully you into surrendering. Then what do we do? Dorian was silent for a long moment. Then he said, we open the seal. What? The seal is a key, but it's also a record. Every steward who's held it has left a mark. If we open it, we can see the truth. If there's a binding, it will be there. If there isn't, we'll have proof. How do we open it? The same way we open the vault, with the seal and with blood. Jessica's voice was very quiet. Whose blood? Rosalind's. She's the heir. It has to be hers. Jessica stood abruptly. Absolutely not. Jessica, you're not cutting my daughter open for some magical ritual. I don't care what the seal says. I'm not cutting her. It's a single drop. A pinprick, that's all. No, then we have no way to prove the letter is a lie. Jessica pressed her hands to her face. There has to be another way. There isn't. They stood in silence. Finally, Jessica lowered her hands and said, I want to talk to her first, of course. That evening, Jessica sat Rosalind down at the kitchen table and explained everything. The treaty, the stewardship, the letter, the seal. Rosalind listened, her expression serious. So they're saying I have to be a steward? She asked. They're saying you might have to. But we don't know if it's true, and if it is, Jessica's voice cracked. Then we'll figure it out. Rosalind looked down at the locket around her neck. She touched it lightly. Mr. Quentin can prove they're lying, right? He thinks he can. Then let's do it. Rosalind, Mom, I'm not scared. I trust him. Jessica looked at her daughter, at the determination in her young face, and felt her heart break a little. Okay, but I'm coming with you. I know. They met Dorian at the vault the next evening. He had prepared a small table in the center of the room covered with a clean cloth. On it sat the locket, a glass vial, and a sterilized needle. Rosalind climbed onto the chair and held out her hand. Do I have to look? Dorian's voice was gentle. No. Jessica held her daughter's other hand as Dorian pricked Rosalind's finger. A single drop of blood welled up. He caught it in the vial, then placed the vial against the locket's seal. The seal glowed faint in silver. Lines of light traced across its surface, forming words in a language Jessica did not recognize. Dorian read them silently, his expression unreadable. Finally, he looked up. There's no binding. Jessica exhaled sharply. Are you sure? I'm certain. The seal recognizes her as heir, but it doesn't compel her. The letter was a lie. Rosalind looked at the glowing seal. Does that mean I'm free? Yes, when you turn 18 you can choose. No one can force you. Rosalind nodded solemnly. Okay, good. Dorian bandaged her finger and handed her a piece of candy from his pocket. You were very brave. I know. Jessica laughed, a wet sound, and pulled her daughter into a hug. Dorian watched them, and something in his chest tightened. The next day, Dorian presented the findings to the council. He showed them the seal's record, explained the lie, and demanded House Dravik be sanctioned again. The council agreed. Dravik's remaining allies were warned, and the harassment stopped. For a while it seemed like the worst was over. But peace, Dorian had learned, was always temporary. 3 years passed. Rosalind turned 11, Jessica turned 38, and Dorian remained exactly as he had been for centuries. They did not talk about the future. They existed in the present, careful and deliberate, holding on to what they had built, until the night Jessica collapsed. She had been at the vault, cataloging new treaty amendments, when she suddenly went pale and swayed. Dorian caught her before she hit the ground. Jessica, I'm fine. Just tired. You're not fine. He carried her to his car and drove her to the hospital. The doctors ran tests, blood work, scans, more tests. A week later they had an answer: cancer, stage 3. Aggressive. Jessica took the news with the same stubborn calm she brought to everything else. How long? With treatment. A year, maybe 2, and without. 6 months, she nodded. Okay. Dorian sat beside her hospital bed, his hands folded, his expression carved from stone. We'll fight this, Dorian. I'll find the best doctors, the best treatment, whatever it takes. Dorian, listen to me. He stopped. Jessica reached out and took his hand. I'm not going to win this fight, she said quietly. I need you to accept that. I don't accept it. You have to, Jessica, please. Her voice broke. Please don't make this harder than it already is. Dorian looked at her, and for the first time in 300 years he felt helpless. There has to be something. There is. You can turn me. Dorian went very still. What? You heard me. Turn me. Make me like you. No, why not? Because I told you what it means. I'm not doing that to you. Jessica's grip tightened. You're not doing it to me. I'm asking you to do it. You don't know what you're asking. Yes, I do. I'll outlive my daughter. I'll watch her grow old and die. I'll lose everyone I know, but I'll have you, and I'll have time. That's more than I have now, Jessica. I'm not ready to die, Dorian. I have a daughter who needs me. I have a job I care about. I have you. I'm not ready to let that go. Dorian's voice was raw. If I turn you, you can't go back. You'll never see sunlight again. You'll have to drink blood. You'll become something other than human. And if you regret it, if you hate what you become, then I'll deal with it. But at least I'll be alive to regret it. They stared at each other. Finally, Dorian said, I need time to think. I don't have time. A day. Give me a day. Jessica nodded. Okay. Dorian left the hospital and walked through the city until dawn. He thought about Jessica, about Rosalind, about the life they had built. He thought about what it would mean to turn her, to make her immortal, to tie her to him for eternity. And he thought about what it would mean to lose her. By the time he returned to the hospital, his decision was made. I'll do it, he said, but on one condition. What condition? You tell Rosalind, you explain what it means, and you give her the chance to say no. Jessica nodded. I will. That evening, Jessica sat her daughter down and told her everything. Rosalind listened, her face pale, and when Jessica finished, she was silent for a long time. Will it hurt? She asked finally. For a little while, but you'll be okay after? Yes. Rosalind looked at Dorian. Will you take care of her? Okay. Rosalind turned back to her mother. Then do it. Jessica pulled her into a hug. I love you, sweetheart. I love you too. The turning was done in the vault late at night, with only Dorian and Jessica present. He prepared her carefully, explaining each step, making sure she understood. Then he bit her clean and quick and fed her his blood. Jessica convulsed once, twice, and then went still. Dorian held her as the transformation took hold, as her heartbeat slowed and then stopped, as her body died and was reborn. It took 3 hours. When it was over, she opened her eyes, and they were no longer brown. They were silver like moonlight on water. "Dorian," she whispered. "I'm here. I can hear everything, the city, the people. It's so loud it will get easier." She sat up slowly, testing her limbs. Her skin was paler now. Her hair shot through with white. She looked at her hands, then at him. "I'm like you. Yes, I'm not going to die. No." Jessica started to cry, great shaking sobs, and Dorian held her while she wept. Not from sadness, but from relief. The transition was hard. Jessica had to learn to control her strength, her speed, her thirst. She had to learn to avoid sunlight, to drink blood, to navigate a world that no longer felt entirely hers. But she adapted, the way she adapted to everything, with stubborn determination and sharp intelligence. Rosalind adjusted too. She was frightened at first, seeing her mother changed, but Jessica was careful to show her that she was still herself. Still kind, still present, still hers. Years passed. Rosalind grew up, graduated high school, and went to college. She studied history, fell in love, got her heart broken, and pieced herself back together. And when she turned 18, Jessica and Dorian sat her down in the vault and asked her the question they had been waiting to ask. "Do you want the stewardship?" Rosalind looked at the locket in her hands, the seal her father's family had carried for centuries. Then she looked at her mother. "Do you want me to take it?" Jessica's voice was steady. "I want you to choose freely, and if I say no, then the stewardship ends. The council takes the documents. You're free." Rosalind was quiet for a long time, then she said, "I don't want it." Jessica exhaled. "Okay, I want to live my own life, not one someone else chose for me." "That's fair." Rosalind handed the locket back to her mother. "But you should keep doing it. You're good at it." Jessica looked at Dorian. He nodded. "The council will accept that. The stewardship continues with you, and when you're ready to step down, we'll find another solution." "And you're okay with that?" Rosalind asked. "I'm proud of you," Jessica said. "You made the right choice." Rosalind smiled. "Thanks, Mom." She left the vault, and Jessica stood there, holding the locket, and felt something inside her settle. "She's free," she said softly. "She is." Dorian agreed. Jessica turned to him. "Thank you for everything. You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do. You gave me time. You gave me a future. You gave me a life I never thought I'd have." Dorian stepped closer and cupped her face in his hands. "You gave me the same." They kissed, slow and certain, and when they pulled apart, Jessica was smiling. "So what now?" she asked. "Now we keep going." "For how long?" "As long as you want." Jessica looked around the vault, at the shelves of documents, the history of centuries. Then she looked back at him. "Forever sounds good. Forever it is." Years later, on the night of Rosalind's coming-of-age celebration, Jessica and Dorian stood in the vault, which had been transformed. The treaty documents were still there, carefully preserved, but the rest of the space had been filled with books. Shelves upon shelves of them, a library of knowledge gathered over centuries. Rosalind walked in, 25 now, confident and self-assured. She looked around and laughed. "You turned the vault into a library. We had the space," Jessica said. "It's perfect." Rosalind hugged her mother, then Dorian. "Thank you for all of this." "You're welcome." Rosalind left to rejoin her friends upstairs, and Jessica and Dorian stood alone in the quiet. "Do you ever regret it?" Jessica asked. "Regret what?" "Turning me, giving me this life." Dorian looked at her, at the woman who had thrown a book at a vampire to protect him, who had fought for her daughter's freedom, who had chosen eternity with him over the simplicity of death. "Not for a second," Jessica smiled. "Good. Because I don't either." They stood together in the library, surrounded by the weight of history and the promise of the future, and for the first time in a very long time, everything felt exactly as it should. The widow who had pawned her necklace for bread was gone. In her place was a woman who had claimed her own destiny, who had fought for her daughter's freedom, and who had found love in the most unexpected place. And the vampire king, who had stopped outside a pawnshop window because a locket was impossible, had found something he had not even known he was searching for, a reason to believe in forever.